Hi, Des from Meridian Interactive here again, and welcome to the team's second update video. Now, I know I've been talking about a second video for a while, but we've been making some really good progress in certain areas, and I've really been holding off to try and incorporate some of that into this video. Parts of it are still a little buggy, but we're working through the issues as we go. Now, once again, before we dive into the content, I want to reiterate some points that were made in the last video. We're currently utilising store-bought assets to help us build out the game. First and foremost, we're building the game on the Atavism MMORPG platform to help speed up the development process. Although at this point in time we've modified, customised and added to many of the elements of the platform. Additionally, even though we do plan to replace some of the existing models in the future, we are currently relying on store-bought assets to build the game around. As mentioned previously, we're doing this to help speed up the build process during these initial stages of development. So what we're aiming to show you today is some of the gameplay around gathering, crafting and questing. We've also got some combat in the video, although there's still a heap of work to go to get to a point that we're happy with. We've mainly been tinkering with the numbers and calcs of the combat to kickstart combat basics and balance. Combat abilities and animations are progressing, but the concepts behind the abilities have been created, and the next steps will be to refine those and introduce more fluid animations for each ability. We've already started on this block of work, and it will continue to be the focus during our next dev period. We also want to show a little more world building in some of the areas we've been working on. We've also got a couple of other team members in here running around with me to demonstrate multiplayer and the ability for players to interact with different areas, mobs, NPCs and each other as part of the island storyline. So enough of the boring stuff, let's jump in and have a look. Now there's a couple of things on the login screen that we've changed since last time, most notably is the game title and logo. We've run with Era of Heroes as it ties in nicely with the board game we've used as inspiration, while still allowing us to build a standalone title. Secondly, the UI artwork and fonts have changed to a less traditional MMO style. We feel this fits a bit better with what we're trying to achieve given the low poly direction we've taken. We're still working with the UI and logo and trialling different fonts and combinations of artwork. We're also planning to change the layout and combination of UI windows for future builds, for example combining multiple windows into one. However, as mentioned in previous video, we're not too concerned with this at this stage. We're anticipating UI changes to a future version of Atavism, which may mean a heap of rework anyway, so we're trying really hard not to waste too much time doubling up. Now let's have another look at the character selection screen. You might notice we've also changed some of the transition screen artwork, but this will need some rework to fit with the new artistic style we're going for. So much like the login screen, the changes here are mostly UI related. We've also toyed with a few animated characters in the background to tie in with the theme of the scene. We've also done some work with the audio in the login and character select screens. We've separated out the music, ambience, UI and sound effects and tied them into the game's sound controls. So we can now increase or decrease the sound levels for each of those different sound groups from within the game itself. So same as last time, I'll take Des into the Australian server. Now I've cheated here a little. I've boosted my character to level 5 so I can demonstrate some of the content. Outside of the level increase, it is a fresh character, so I'll be quickly actioning some of the same content we went through in the last video. So we start the game down on the docks where the story begins. With regards to the story, the island is considered a training ground for new heroes, and the player will start the game with a brief tutorial before starting the main story quest line and side quests. The idea is that each zone in the world will incorporate regional stories that feed into the overarching story. Now I won't go into the quest detail, so we'll start the tutorial quest chain off and move through them to get to some of the customised elements in the game. One of the quest rewards is a one-handed sword, so to speed things up I've already trained in one-handed swords as well as learnt a few one-handed skills. So the quest we're currently at, the player is required to spar with one of the officers. What we've done here is essentially added in the ability for a player to duel with an NPC. We build it in such a way that we can use the same or slightly modified version of this mechanic for other elements of the game, such as boss or elite fights. It provides a little variation for us on the quests going forward.
Evil cannot hide from my sight. At your service.
The next quest is a standard kill and collect task. We'll see a little of the combat here. Again, plenty of work to do to get the combat running smoothly, but the basic mechanics are things like taunting, knockback, aggro management, avoidance mechanics, those sorts of things. They're all in here, we just need to work on getting it balanced and fluid and the animations blending better. We've also incorporated a lot of custom calcs to determine things like damage output, experience gain, as well as variations on regen effects and power generation for each of the classes.
I will end you. I will end you. I will end you. I will end you. I will end you.
Now we're at the final quest in this chain, and it's a little different in that it's a capture quest. We've incorporated some basic game mechanics which allow you to use items to capture animals or mobs. This specific mechanic isn't planned to be incorporated as a key combat mechanic throughout the game at this stage, but it does provide us with more quest options going forward. It also opens up the door for things like animal training in the event we want to add companions for some classes. The next element of the game that I want to show is the fishing. With fishing, we've included a heap of variables that need to be considered when trying to catch the different species of fish. So far, we've mapped out almost 60 different fish species and items that a player can reel in. Now, I won't spoil it by providing the variables we've included, but they all impact the amount and type of fish you can catch at any one time. Think reel fishing and all of the different environmental and seasonal aspects that go into a fishing trip. So you can essentially drop a line in any body of water at any location. However, the fish may not be biting in that area at the time you go fishing, or it's just not a good spot to fish at all. You may have to move to different areas to catch fish, depending on combinations of these variables.
If you break it, you
To demonstrate how fishing works, I'll go up to the fishing vendor here and purchase a fishing rod and also the book Think Like a Fish. I'll learn the book by right-clicking on it, and after a short time you'll notice a tide indicator up here in the World Time section of the UI. So this helps you plan your fishing around the tides, which is one of the variables. Some fish can only be caught around certain tides, for example between 1 hour before high tide and maybe 2 hours after high tide. So fishing itself is pretty simple. You go up to a body of water and click on the cast ability and then click on the water. Your lure will be cast out to the point where you clicked. If the fish are biting, it will float there until the fish bites. If the fish aren't biting, the game will alert you to this. When a fish bites, the lure disappears momentarily and reappears in a different location. You then have a short time to click on the lure to reel in the fish. For rarer species, this will occur more than once before you can successfully reel in your catch. If you don't click on the lure in time, the fish will escape. The next thing we want to demonstrate is the crafting. Because we've been concentrating on the base mechanics and getting them right, we've limited our testing to rudimentary cooking and foraging recipes. Cooking and foraging are the basic crafting and gathering skills that every new player gets by default. We've set up some test vegetables for foraging behind Trewillan here, and the meat required in the recipes can currently be gathered from the fish, wolves and rabbits around the town. Now the idea behind crafting and gathering is that you will be able to purchase, loot and discover recipes for each of the crafting professions. However, you'll be limited with the amount of crafting and gathering professions you can train in. So generally you'll want to choose gathering professions that mostly match with the crafting you will be doing. Naturally, there will be crossover where you will require either gathered or crafted items from other professions to be able to complete some of your recipes. There is no restriction on purchasing or using these materials. Basic recipes are available to be purchased from the trainers. With the cooking trainer here, you can see the recipes that Chef Rem has available. If you've trained in that profession, you can purchase these recipes and learn them immediately. Crafting them is restricted by level though. The recipe will tell you what level you need to be able to craft it. We've also included the ability to discover new recipes through a process of trial and error. At this point in time, knowledge of a base recipe is required to discover a new one. However, we're still discussing whether this should remain as a requirement to the discovery process. You can then add other items to the discovery window to try and discover new recipes. These discovered recipes aren't available from the trainers or vendors. However, there are a couple of requirements that need to be met before you can discover a new recipe. Firstly, you must have trained in the gathering profession to be able to use the materials in the discovery process. So for example, if a certain type of wood is required to discover a new cooking recipe, you need to have trained in logging in order to be able to discover it. Secondly, there will be a skill level requirement either in the crafting profession, gathering profession, or both in order to discover the new recipe. We're also looking at options to allow players to trade discovered recipes. There's nothing stopping players from purchasing the materials required to make the recipe, assuming they have trained in the correct crafting skill. And finally, in the crafting space, we'll have rare and sought-after recipes dropped from mobs and bosses within the game. The recipes themselves will be tradable and will provide players with the ability to craft rare and higher quality items. And last but not least, we've got a couple of shots here of areas that we've been working on. We've still got a fair bit of work to do on mapping out the quest path to incorporate them, but the island as a whole is coming along. We've also mostly completed 2 dungeon instances where players can group up and fight more challenging mobs. Now this all fits into the greater game story and what we've planned for the starting area moving forward. Well, once again, that's it for now. We've finally got this video out. As we've done previously, we'll continue to work on elements of the game, and as we approach a point where we've got enough to showcase, we'll record a new video, upload it to our YouTube channel, and link it across various social media platforms. That's it, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.